Hello everyone! A while back I put up a community post where I told you that I wanted to do some fan art related videos. I then put up a poll for you guys to decide which one I was going to do first, and FNAF won! So today I'm going to be working on fan art while I fangirl about FNAF. So first of all, I became a fan of FNAF a few years ago, a while before Sister Location came out. I actually remember when the first FNAF came out, but for some reason it didn't spark much interest in the beginning. I think it's because I wasn't really that into games as a tween. Also, I didn't speak English at the time, so watching YouTubers like Markiplier or the Game Theorists was a bit out of question at the time. Eventually my English got better and I was able to understand videos in English. Then I found countless FNAF theory videos and I was hooked. So what is Five Nights at Freddy's? For those who don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's at this point is a full-on franchise, comprised of a total of 9 games, 3 book collections, a few other extra activity books and guides, as well as a ton of merch, especially Funko Pops and plushies. The first game was released back in 2014, so officially we're going to celebrate FNAF's 10th anniversary this year. The first few games were developed by Scott Cawthon alone at neck-breaking speed. Just as a point of reference, the first and second games were released in 2014, the third and fourth in 2015, and FNAF World was released in 2016. Only after FNAF World does Scott start to take longer to develop his games. This is because the way FNAF World first came out was a little bit half-baked, and Scott was really embarrassed by it. If I remember correctly, he refunded everyone, took the game off the internet, and then he released it again a while later, this time much more finished, and it was free as well, so that's nice. FNAF is also a horror game where you usually, but not always, work as a security guard during the night shift. What's the catch? Well, the animatronics in the pizzeria move on their own. At first, we're led to believe that if the animatronics see us, they will confuse us for an endoskeleton and they'll want to stuff us on an animatronic suit, killing us in the process. However, if you pay attention to all the little newspaper articles that sometimes appear in the cameras, you'll start to piece together the story of an unfortunate tragedy, where 5 children were killed and stuffed into animatronics. To survive, you need to keep your eyes on the cameras, and you also need to be smart with your resources, because Fazbear Entertainment doesn't seem to care all that much about their employees, so they give you access to very little energy. Most of the horror in the series comes from very cool Uncanny Valley-like renders of the animatronics, the stress of slowly but surely losing energy, and especially the sound design. This game fascinates me. Even if we just think about the way it was developed, it's fascinating. You see, Scott had already done many games, but they never really took off. FNAF was his last-ditch attempt at being a game developer. FNAF was quite literally going to be his last video game, but it simply blew up. People loved the game. It made a lot of creators' careers, and it created a whole subgenre of games, what we call FNAF fan games, that take FNAF's formula and put their own spin on it. Some examples off the top of my head are Five Nights at Candy's, Pop Goes, Joy of Creation, and many more. In fact, the FNAF community is so full of fan games that Scott created the Fan Game Initiative, where some FNAF games would be able to be remade and sold commercially, which is absolutely amazing. I think Scott really loves the FNAF community. Even if you don't like the guy, you can't deny that. The most engaging thing about FNAF was and still is its lore. You see, since FNAF was supposed to be a standalone game, the plot was not exactly developed beyond 5 kids who died and were stuffed into the animatronics. But because the story was revealed to us using Easter eggs and context clues, many people, me included, were really curious about all the little details. We wanted to know more. We wanted to solve the mystery. Who was the killer? Who were the victims? Does Phone Guy know what's going on? Is he the killer? Scott kept this storytelling strategy for future games. Honestly, to a point where even though the story is super convoluted, we are in too deep. We can't just leave it. That's not a choice anymore. They got us hooked. So going back a little, FNAF tells us its story by using Phone Guy to tell us the gist of it all. But through details hidden in the cameras, like the newspapers, really human animatronic behavior and sound, we start to realize that Phone Guy isn't exactly reliable, or at the very least it doesn't know what's actually going on. Starting with the second game, Scott started to add 8-bit minigames where we would see some aspects of the story, like the purple sprite of the killer, the victims, etc, etc. And while waiting for new installments, Scott would release teasers where you would have to brighten up the pictures to see the secret details and messages that would relate to the mystery as a whole. Again, an incredibly smart way of promoting the game, keeping the hype going and interacting with the fanbase. Then things like the logbook started to get released. The whole activity book is a puzzle to solve important aspects of the lore, such as Golden Freddy's identity. Some of these puzzles have not been solved to this day, like for example the Foxy Grid. The way the story is told always strives to be ambiguous. Because of that, FNAF has an incredibly dedicated theorizing community, with some channels only making FNAF lore videos. If you're curious, my favorites are Dawko, The Game Theorists, Ritos, FNAF, ID's Fantasy, and Not Real Name Not At All. I have to admit, the theorizing aspect is probably the funnest part of FNAF. It's such a collaborative part of the fandom, creators, each one with different perspectives trying to solve the puzzle that is this lore. We have yet to be proven right or get to a consensus. In fact, right now the community is kinda split. Some believe the books are canon to the game, some believe they aren't, and some believe some stories are canon while others are not. What's my opinion? Honestly, whatever gives the best narrative. Looking at the books as guidelines more than concrete things that happen seems to give us a cleaner, more satisfying result, because some books' information conflicts with what we already know about the series, or at least what we think we know. Which, granted, most of it is conjecture, but still, we have loose understanding of what happened. It goes something like this, and mind you, I'm going to try to be brief. So I'll skip a few things, and I'll only stick to the earlier parts of the timeline, so no talk about the Mimic. Also, if you feel like it's getting a bit confusing and convoluted, you're not alone. Now, meet William Afton, a guy that decided to open up an animatronic-themed restaurant with his buddy Henry, a robotics expert. This restaurant started with two characters, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These animatronic suits use spring locks to keep the mechanical parts in place so that the animatronics can double up as a character costume, like the ones you would see at meet and greets in Disneyland, for example. These costumes are very dangerous though, very sensitive. Moving too much or water getting into the suit would result in a spring lock failure that would almost definitely kill someone. Fazbear Entertainment doesn't care much about it. They just tell the employees that in the case of a spring lock failure, they should just go to the closest staff room and die there, away from the customers. Keep this in mind. Sometime in the 80s, probably 83, a child that is hinted at being William's son is bullied by his big brother Michael. One day, the bullying goes a little too far when Michael and his friends pick up the crying child and fit his head in the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic. At the kid's own birthday party, mind you. The kid, understandably terrified, can't stop moving or crying, and thus a spring lock failure happens, resulting in the child going into a coma and then dying shortly after. This incident most likely resulted in the Fredbear family diner closing. Other locations are still open. This brought a lot of problems to the Afton family. The family was utterly devastated. William assumedly took up drinking. One day, in a drunken stupor, William finds Charlie, Henry's daughter, locked out of another Fazbear pizzeria. He was furious. He probably blamed Henry for his kid's death, so he just killed her. Charlie later possessed the puppet. William probably enjoyed killing a wee bit too much, because the next thing he did was put on his favorite Spring Bonnie suit and murder 5 children and hide their bodies in the animatronics. This event is commonly referred to as the missing child incident, and was the reason the restaurant closed again. The pizzeria eventually reopens. This is the FNAF 2 location, but mind you, chronologically, the second game actually comes before the first one. In this location, Afton kills 5 more kids, I think. I'm gonna be honest, the dead child incident kinda confuses me. It's even hard to remember it even happened in the first place, to be honest. Also, not sure when Afton created the Fun Times. I'm guessing around this time. He probably wanted to capture more kids. I don't know, the guy is just spiraling down at this point. So the Fun Times were made to lure kids and capture them. This backfired on him when his daughter Elizabeth passed away when she tried to play with Circus Baby. Another unfortunate event in William's life. But this one was somehow different. This time William was able to discover agony and remnant. This is basically how possession in animatronics happens. Someone dies in agony near metal, that metal will become embedded with remnant, and thus possession happens. How did he discover this? Elizabeth is possessing baby, and I'm guessing he noticed. He wanted to study it further, so he tried to get more remnant by going to the old pizzeria and dismantling the original animatronics. Again, this backfired. Dismantling the animatronics only resulted in the spirits appearing to William, scaring him into a wet spring bunny costume that would then spring lock him and kill him. The room he was in was sealed and no one ever touched it again. Well, until FNAF 3. Let's take a break from William, shall we? Let's talk about Charlie. What of her? Well, she possessed the puppet, and as the puppet, she has been trying to help the other kids move on into the afterlife, and eventually is kinda able to do it in the Happiest Day minigame. Supposedly. Okay, what about Michael? Well, Michael has been trying to deal with his guilt, maybe helping William in some capacity, maybe being experimented on with nightmare gas, who really knows? What we know is that he eventually went to the sister location where he was manipulated by Baby and scooped by Ennard. We also know that he didn't die, even though he is technically a corpse, probably because the scooper injected him somehow with remnants. Only then did Michael start to try and clean up after his father. He went from pizzeria to pizzeria, trying to find his father, trying to atone for his mistakes. It's believed that we play as Michael in almost, if not all of the FNAF games in the Scott era. Back to Willy. 30 years later in FNAF 3, he was released by Phone Dude and faced his son every night until his son ultimately burned down the place to get rid of him. It didn't work. In FNAF 6, we again play as Michael as he collects and salvages all the remaining possessed animatronics. William, Elizabeth, Charlie, and Molten Freddy. I'm not gonna get into it, just know that we think that Molten Freddy is all the remnant or agony of kids in the missing children incident, all fused into one. He is also what is left over of Ennard when Ennard expelled Baby from their group. It's just a long story, okay? Just trust me. But stay with me. I know this story is convoluted, I know, but we're almost done. Stay with me if you haven't left already. FNAF 6 was Henry's plan. Yes, that Henry that I mentioned in the beginning. No, I don't know where this guy was during all this madness. We were never told. Maybe in prison? Who knows? It doesn't matter, he's back and he wants to end it all. He creates Lefty to capture the puppet and he makes this new pizzeria to lure in the other animatronics. And then he hires Michael to work there. In the end, they all burn to the ground, finally finishing all this madness. Well, until Ultimate Custom Nights. This time, we probably play as Afton, forced to relive the same nightmare over and over again for all eternity. A punishment given to him by the one he shouldn't have killed. This guy killed a lot of people, but we all got to a sort of consensus where we think the one that he shouldn't have killed is Cassidy, the child possessing Golden Freddy. Cool, the story seems complete, yes? Well, no, because Fazbear Entertainment decided to make a VR game to poke fun at their controversies. Like usual, they cut as many corners as they could and end up scanning a virus, Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap would then enslave Vanessa, leading to the events of Security Breach. And for now, this arc of the story isn't finished, so I think I'll stop myself from retelling what we think we know about the story right here. So yeah, very convoluted, very confusing, and very disorienting, with contradicting evidence and at least one retcon. Still, somehow, it's still very fun to theorize about. It's like I said forever ago, we're in too deep to just leave it. We need to see this through until the end, and I'm so here for it. Stillwell has shown that they can make some pretty cool games. They have some pretty neat ideas. I'm so excited to know what they are going to do next. They are kinda teasing a carnival-themed game, maybe in the 70s, exploring the earlier parts of the timeline. That would be pretty cool. Also, they have been able to bring more character into animatronics. The Glamrocks are pretty amazing. I especially love Glamrock Freddy. He's probably my favorite character in the whole franchise. Sun and Moon are pretty cool and funny. Gregory is fine. Vanessa is also cool, even if a little underutilized. Vanny as a concept is really good, though I would have loved it more if they went with the idea of Vanny being a copycat killer or the idea of a cult of Afton being involved somehow, but she's still cool nonetheless. And finally, the movie came out last year after years and years and years of anticipation. And what did I think of it? I loved it. It was pretty good. I loved the Easter eggs. The energy in the cinema was amazing. When Spring Bonnie appeared, everyone clapped so hard. When he said his signature line, the cinema exploded with energy. People were dressed up for the occasion, sometimes in cosplay even. It was an incredible experience. Well, for me anyway. I took my friends with me. They knew nothing of FNAF. They just came because I told them I really wanted to watch the movie. And they ended up not liking it, which was a shame, but we still had fun. And speaking of fun, I really had tons of fun working on this video. Here are all the drawings I made. And with this, we get to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, consider leaving a like and subscribing, and until next time, bye!